Hey 50/50 readers, I'm Daniel Ford, author of Sid Sanford Lives, and I'm also the co-host of the literary podcast Writer's Bone. Riffing on my love of noir and family drama, my debut novel focuses on the life of my main character, Sid Sanford. It's a coming-of-age story, it's a love story, it's a story about family and friendship, and I pretty much torture Sid for 300 pages, and it's a lot of fun. I think what really makes me unique as a writer is my dialogue. Growing up with a big, boisterous family who like to talk, who like to joke around, who like to laugh, really gave me an ear for how people talked early on. And of course, living in New York City and being surrounded by 10 million people all the time, being able to catch pieces of conversations on the subway or in a restaurant or just walking down the street, all of that was invaluable to making me the writer I am today. And being a dialogue guy, I still try to emulate Aaron Sorkin, and I know that a lot of people who don't like him or don't necessarily appreciate his work say, oh, the big ding on him is people don't talk like that. People don't converse that way in real life. And yeah, they should. I'm sorry that witty, smart banter is not a lot of people's things, but it's my thing. And for me, conversations like that sound like music. It's jazz to me, it's poetry to me, and that's what I strive for when I sit down to write. I hear conversations before I hear everything else, and I make them sound as smart and witty as humanly possible. So Sid Sanford Lives is a standalone. I do have ideas for short stories that I could interject in the timeline. Maybe some things that I cut out of the novel can be repurposed. But Sid and I need a break for the moment. But I would not be surprised if we met again someday. So the line between Sid and I used to be a lot less blurry than it is currently. And I think Sid became his own man during my writing process, which I know sounds insane and only a writer can get away with it. And serial killers, I guess, if they're not caught. The only two people who can talk about characters this way. I think it's weird that I think bits of more of me ended up in the characters of Jocelyn and Constance than Sid in the final edition of the novel. My advice to my younger self is to meet Sean Toohey 10 years earlier than I did. But seriously, I tell my young writing self just to write. Don't try to edit the sentence immediately when you put it on the page. Just let it flow out, let it breathe, and then go back and edit. And this is advice that I still need because, I'm constantly putting the red pen to a sentence that just came out of my head. And that's just not a smart or efficient way to write. Someday I hope to evolve to that point where I'm not doing that. And I think my publishers, hi Steve and Megan, will appreciate it as well. I don't know if this was considered tough criticism, but it was certainly welcome criticism, and it was definitely fair criticism. I had to write a review of High Noon for a college class, and obviously that sounds, easy or whatever, and to his credit, my professor, Morgan Peckmay, who is one of the filmmakers behind Get Me Roger Stone, which was a big hit on Netflix last year, he wrote at the top of my paper, what are you afraid of? And every time I write something, every time I go back to edit something, I think about that. What fear is holding you back from making this great? What are you not putting on the page that you should be putting on? And it's not that paper wasn't bad or poorly written. It was just missing something. And he called me out on it. And it totally changed the way I thought about writing and the way I wrote. And I was holding something back, whether I realized it or not. And now every time I go in, it's like, no fear. Like that's my baseline. No fear, get everything that you're afraid of off your mind and just write. Being a journalist, it's never hard to edit my own work or other people's work. I actually enjoy it a lot more than the writing process. It's more fun when you can dissect something and change something that's already on the page. Starting with that blank page, as all writers know, is terrifying, and sometimes it's prohibitive, and you don't think about the end game, and you get caught in your own head, and then you have nothing. So it's a constant, how do I start this? But once I get to the editing process, I can cut and slash with the best of them. I want to live in whatever world that Richard Russo writes. I think my dream scenario would be to have a beer with Sully from Nobody's Fool. I think it would be a lot of fun to live in the world that Kat Howard builds in her novel An Unkindness of Magicians. However, I don't know how long I'd survive in that world, but I think I would have a lot of fun before my demise. So this is going to sound cliche and syrupy, but it happens to be true. It's just, I get inspired by everyday things, the mundane things. I think that everyday living is utterly fascinating, even when it's, bogging you down or draining you. There's such potential for storytelling in everyday life, and you just have to be tuned to it instead of just trying to live through it. Sadly, and this is more for my editors and my publishers, my process hasn't changed all that much. My writing process is still very chaotic. I write between the cracks in the day. It's very undisciplined. It's very free-flowing. Maybe someday I'll evolve, but at the moment, this is what works for me. And the real victims here are Steve and Megan. As per usual, I have the great Min-Jin Lee's Pachinko nearby. So as instructed, I am going to read from page 27. Of course she is. Sonia, a woman's life is endless work and suffering. There is suffering and then more suffering. It's better to expect it, You're becoming a woman now, so you should be told this. For a woman, the man you marry will determine the quality of your life completely. A good man is a decent life, and a bad man is a cursed life. But no matter what, always expect suffering. And just keep working hard. No one will take care of a poor woman, just ourselves. And you should go out and buy this book and read it immediately. Min-Jin Lee is a wonderful writer, and I dare say a very good friend who I am proud to know, and I'm glad I can share her work in this venue. Thank you for listening and learning more about me and Sid Sanford Lives. Special thank you to Steve and Megan for putting together a special group of writers that I'm extremely proud to be a part of. Keep writing and reading, everyone.